Welcome back to Database School. I am your host, Aaron Francis. In this episode, I talk to the co-creator of Vitess and the co-founder of PlanetScale. The same person. His name is Sugu Sougoumarane. We talk about his time at YouTube and the invention of Vitess, moving on to PayPal, then founding PlanetScale, and finally his time in the wilderness. He took a little sabbatical and then he comes back to create Vitess for Postgres. He's joining Supabase to bring Vitess to the Postgres community. You're really going to enjoy this one. He's incredibly smart, but also very, very humble and very thoughtful. So, enough yapping from me. Let's enjoy this episode of Database School. This is kind of some breaking news, so I'm super excited to be here. I am here with Sugu Sougoumarane. He is the co-creator of Vitess, the co-founder of PlanetScale, and he is back to talk with us about his next adventure. But before we get into that, we're going to dive into a little bit about the history of Vitess, and then we'll talk about what's up next. So, Sugu, thank you for being here. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I'm Sugu, and I've been involved with databases for a pretty long time. I think since the 90s, I would say.
Wow.
I was working at Informix, and then I moved on to PayPal in the early days and took care of scalability there. And from there, I moved to YouTube, and that is where I co-created Vitess with my colleague Mike Solomon. This was because YouTube was falling apart on the database side, and we had to come up with something that would leap us ahead in terms of the troubles it was going through. We can talk about that more later, but eventually, Vitess, we decided to donate it to CNCF. And by that time, Vitess had a lot of adoption. Slack had started using it, GitHub was using it, and more users were coming on board. At that time, Cash App was also using it, and
Oh, wow.
so it was time to start a company fully dedicated to backing up this software, which is how I ended up co-founding PlanetScale with Jiten, who was also with me at YouTube. He was actually on the SRE side, taking care of Vitess. And about 3 years ago, by that time it had been 12 years since I was working on Vitess. And 3 years ago, I had successfully built a full team that was taking care of the project. And I said, okay, it is time to take a break. So I went on sabbatical. And recently, this itch came back that I need to do something. And when I saw Postgres, I just couldn't control myself. And so here I am.
I
uh,
love it.
yeah.
That's a lot, and we're gonna cover it all. Let's start. Take me back to the YouTube days. So you're at YouTube, and YouTube is taken off, and y'all just can't keep up. Everything's falling apart all over the place. And so, what was the conversation like when you and your co-creator went to somebody and said, what if we invented something entirely new and wrote it from scratch? Like, how did that come to be that was the solution that ended up working?
So that's actually a very good story. It was actually my co-creator who did this, who thought of this idea, who's saying that this seems like a losing war because
Hmm.
every day was actually worse than the previous day, and
Oof.
every time there was an outage, it was a database. So what he did was uh, he went to a Starbucks. It wasn't a Starbucks. It's actually a coffee shop called Dana Street in Mountain View, and wrote a huge spreadsheet. I still actually have the spreadsheet where he listed all the problems that we were facing, and also all the problems we are going to face as this thing grows, and listed a bunch of solutions saying that, okay, how do we solve this problem? How do we solve this problem? And then you take a step back and look at everything. We knew what we had to build.
Hmm.
And the answer at that time was we needed a proxy layer that stands between the application and MySQL and protect it.
Hmm.
That was kind of the high level statement. And that is kind of how Vitess was born. And we basically said that in order to build this, we need a very different focus from where we are today, which is our focus was always like, how do we fight the next fire, or how do we survive till next Tuesday? So those were the kind of thoughts that were in our mind. We actually pulled ourselves out of the day-to-day operations and said, we are going to take ourselves out. You guys are on your own, and we'll build this and come back with something that will solve all our problems. It was very ambitious.
Yeah, but it worked. So you and your co-creator set up
I
like
can't believe it worked.
you set up a special unit, and you said, we're not involved with firefighting, we're not involved with fixing problems, we're going to do this big bet. And this big bet is we're going to basically rewrite, not really, we're going to write a proxy layer that pretends to be MySQL and sits between the application and the actual databases, and we will do a bunch of stuff in there. So tell the people what exactly, just kind of at a high level, what is Vitess and why did that work? Like, what is it about Vitess that solved all of those problems?
So the what Vitess is today is nothing like what we initially conceived.
Okay.
It evolved kind of iteratively over time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the initial conception of Vitess was just cluster management and protection of the database.
Okay.
Is all we wanted to do. And the biggest problem with the MySQL database at that time was connections, which is actually still a problem with Postgres.
Mm-hmm.
But now there are solutions coming up. But that was a problem with MySQL also. So the first product that we built was just a connection pooler. Get traffic and pool it across just a few connections. And that took a while actually, because we didn't build it as a simple connection pooler. We kind of knew that a dumb connection pooler will not take us far. We actually built an intelligent connection pooler that actually understood queries. So we actually parsed every query because we knew that we had to field queries, judge them, as it were, saying that this is a bad query, we will not let it go to the database. Those were kind of the thoughts that we had, because the bad queries would be the ones that would actually take our databases down all the time. So that's the reason why we went one level above the immediate requirement, and it took us about a year finally to get it launched.
Wow.
And at that time, it was not Vitess, but what happened was once that server was out there in the middle, people realized, oh my God, there are things we can do here before the query reaches the database.
Mm-hmm.
So feature requests started coming in, and slowly and because we had the parser, we could do some very intelligent things with our queries. And so that is kind of what led to a large number of features that we could add to Vitess. Without the parser, we wouldn't have been able to add them. And that eventually evolved into what Vitess is today, essentially emulating an entire database.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's an interesting that was an interesting and insightful call there at the beginning to say, instead of just doing dumb connection pooling, we're going to add a little bit of intelligence here to like inspect the queries. And it sounds like that was the thing, that was like the golden insight there. And then once you have that server in the middle, you now have, it's like you now have a new bucket in your brain where you can put things, right? And you're like, ooh, because we have this server in the middle, what if we did this? And what if we did that? Whereas when that doesn't exist, your brain doesn't even think like, well, we can't do that because we're just talking to the database and I'm not going to go rewrite MySQL. But now that you have this thing, you can cast all of your hopes and dreams upon it. So what were some of the first things that came in? You're in this, secluded team writing this thing, and you put it out to the world, and everybody's like, great, you solved some of our problems. Now can you do this? What were some of the first few big ones that came in?
So the first one is adding a limit clause to every query that the application sent.
Interesting.
Because in OLTP, you are not expected to fetch 100,000 rows to serve your web page.
Right.
So what we did was, if your query had no limit clause, we would put one, and 10,000 was the limit. If the number of rows exceeded that limit, we would return an error saying that you exceeded your row count limit, so this query is invalid. So that actually, that was actually one of the biggest problems in YouTube, because people would assume, like, how many videos can somebody have? You'd have a hypothetical answer. So you'd say, oh, just fetch all the videos. But there are people who have a huge number of videos, for example.
Sure, yeah.
And so when this happened, this protected a whole bunch of outages. Another really, really cool feature that we added in the beginning was this happened actually when, again, it's related to the number of videos. The YouTube index page, we used to highlight certain users and show their videos in their homepage, in YouTube's homepage. So one of the users that got highlighted had 250,000 videos. And that query had no limit clause. So which means that every page hit would go and fetch those 250,000 videos.
Dude. So when you did this, when you like put this limit on there and stuff just starts hitting a hard wall, right? It's just like, sorry, that doesn't work. What do the application developers think at that point? Are they super happy that you've surfaced some sort of like error, or like where's the, as far as the internal teams go, you like put this blocker on the database, and then what happens on the application developer side?
Not all of them were happy.
Yeah,
and I think we had some level of arrogance to tell them to live with it. We are not going to change this. And I guess in our case, it came from the fact that protecting the database is more important than keeping one developer happy. So yes, I think we might have pissed off a few developers.
I figured. So are you on, at that point, is it just the ops team that you're on? So it's at that point it's ops versus, application developers?
Yeah, we were kind of the at that time we were the architecture team. So we also kind of dictated how applications were written, what rules to follow to access the database. We were deploying software. So we were kind of later we became the ops team, but at that time we were the architecture team. We're talking 2007. So
I know, that's why I was thinking probably DevOps probably wasn't around.
No,
back
DevOps
then.
didn't exist though.
Yeah, so you're just ops or architecture. Man, that's so interesting. Okay, so the first one was taking this, query that shouldn't ever exist and could result in degraded performance, or just knocking the whole thing over and stopping it at the border and saying, sorry, you can't come in here, error, go fix your stuff. That seems pretty reasonable. You said at the beginning, Vitess was fundamentally like smaller and way different than what it's grown into now. So how did you guide that growing from an intelligent connection pooler to what it is now, which is this massive sprawling thing? Talk us through kind of like that journey of, I assume, a few years. I know that the whole thing's been running for several, but I have to imagine that first few years was pretty active.
These are good questions, because
oh, thanks.
Nobody has asked these questions. How did so when we first deployed Vitess, it was just VT tablet, by the way.
Okay.
And even VT tablet faced a lot of obstacles because it was an additional layer and it added latency. And 2011 is when we first launched. We started working on Vitess in 2010. 2011, not Go 1.0 was not even out yet. I think Go 1.0 came out 12 or something. So we were launching on a non-launched version of Go, and it was not efficient. Like at that time the latency was like 10 milliseconds, which was
Mm.
like horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like sub millisecond, but at that time, and we were on hard disks, by the way. There were no SSDs those days.
Hmm. So pause
S-
there for 1 second. What was the choice to go with Go, with it being so early? So it must have had some massive upsides that papered over all of these other problems. So what was the decision there?
it was, you won't believe, it was a very quick decision. I hated Java, and my co-creator hated C.
Great. I
And
love
we
it.
said not Python, obviously, because this needs to perform. How
Mm-hmm.
about this new language called Go? You know?
Incredible. God, I love how human it all is. Okay, so
Yeah,
you
it's
all picked Go because it was the mutually agreed upon non-hated language. It's still pre 1.0. Okay, so carry on. You're working with Go. It's got a 10 millisecond latency, and you're starting to grow.
yeah, and fortunately, I would say when we later learned about Go, we really liked the Go team's approach to the language.
Hmm.
They were exactly, they were thinking exactly the way we were approaching problems. Like, like there is this fascination to complexity. We were like, things should be as simple as you can, like you should not complicate. So they were like, we were we were pretty much in sync with them, so we really liked
Mm-hmm.
them. And since they were also at Google, they've caught wind that we are developing this, so they helped us quite a bit. So they actually prioritized our problems,
Cool.
and worked very hard at making things work for us, which is
Hmm.
pretty awesome. And so yeah, so we were so in VT tablet, things were things we were basically adding more features to VT tablet, and by the time YouTube was in a happy place, but
Hmm.
then came the first resharding experiment,
Hmm.
because we had, I think, I don't remember anymore. I think we had 8 shards and we were going to 16. And
So quaint. So long ago. That's crazy.
yes. And that was quite a nightmare. And then we said, oh, you
Oh,
know what?
okay.
We need to add resharding, make it part
Hmm.
of Vitess. And so that's when we introduced this whole metadata layer,
Hmm.
where we actually, at that time, it was Zookeeper. There was no etcd.
Hmm.
So Zookeeper, we used to store metadata in there and then use that to manage resharding. And that required the application to connect to Zookeeper to figure out what to connect to, which made the application more complex.
Hmm.
So every time you resharded, you had to basically push things to the Zookeeper and force the application to reload that information, saying that, this is a new sharding configuration, you have to go there. And that's when we decided to introduce the VT gate layer,
Okay.
because we can't be having changes in the resharding to affect the application. So we'll have this VT gate layer, which will watch over this topology, and you
Mm-hmm.
just send traffic to VT gate, and VT gate will know which shard to send it.
Perfect.
And it
Okay,
was
so
not a yeah,
no, go ahead.
it was not a database connection. It was actually a specialized RPC connection,
Hmm.
because the application still had to know which shard, which at that time we had this concept of a keyspace ID, which
Mm-hmm.
mapped to a shard, and the keyspace ID is now core to Vitess. So previously the application would say send this query to that shard, and we changed the API to saying send this query to this keyspace ID, and VTGate would take the keyspace ID, look at the topology, and say, oh, that maps to this shard, and send it there. So if you resharded, then the application is unaffected. So that's
I
what the
see.
VT layer brought in.
Okay, so you started you started with the VT tablet, and then as a function of the painful reshard, you introduced the VT gate. So for the people listening at this point in the history, talk us through from the application to the actual data, where are we connecting and who's talking to whom? Where does VT-Gate, VT-Tablet, and the running MySQL instance, where does that all fit in from the application all the way through?
So I should tell you the life of a query. I don't know if you've heard
Yes.
of the life of stories.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it. That's perfect.
So the application uses gRPC. Actually, in Google, it is Stubby. Stubby, right? Stubby, yes. It's a
you tell me. I don't know.
yeah, it's Google's version of gRPC.
Okay.
gRPC was born of that project. I should actually confirm the project. I think it is Stubby. Anyway, so it connects through gRPC to one of the VT gates.
Okay.
And then sends a query, select star. But in the query, it says this query belongs to this keyspace ID, which means that if it's a select from a user, it also says the user has this keyspace ID. And so then VT-Gate says, oh, okay, let me go look up this keyspace ID in my topology. And the topology says, oh, this keyspace ID is in this key range, and that maps to this shard.
Okay.
And then VT tablet says, okay, which are the VT tablets present that serve this shard? That is also in the topology. And it gets a list, and it chooses one randomly. If it's a read query, it's a random choice. And then sends this query to VT tablet and says, please serve this query for me. And VT tablet has all the protection there. Like, for example, if there's a limit clause missing, it will add it. If it's an invalid query, it will reject it. And then VT tablet sends the query to MySQL, which serves your query, and the results are returned back to the application.
Life of a query. I love it. That's very easy. That's very straightforward. So is it fair to say that at this point in the history of Vitess, the VT-Gate just handles the pointing to the correct VT tablet or shard?
It had no parser like VT tablet did.
Yes.
It would not judge your query. It was a pure router.
And so who, or rather how, is the application developer signaling to VT-Gate what did you call it? Keyspace ID that is not mapped to shard, but is loosely mapped to shard by somebody else. How's the application developer saying this user, Aaron Francis, is in keyspace ID 123? Where does that come from?
So that knowledge was already present when we did the initial sharding.
Got it. Okay.
And there were two methods. One is the first sharding technique was hashing of the user ID. Actually, the first sharding technique was actually not a hashed user ID. It was actually a random assignment of a user ID to a shard and a table that added that, a lookup table that told you where that user lived. We moved away from that and then changed it to a hash of a user ID. So user ID would get hashed. That produces a keyspace ID. And then that keyspace ID is mapped to a range-based shard that was split, in our case, equally split, like 8, 16, 32, 64, that way. That was for user IDs. But if you had a select by video ID, we wanted to keep our video IDs with our users. For video IDs, you had to know which user ID the video ID belonged to, and we had a lookup table. You're smiling because you know where this is going. And that video ID, so we would look up the table, find out the user ID for that video ID, and then do a hash and send the query to the shard that had that user.
Okay. And so where do we live now? This is all groundbreaking at the time, but I'm sure looking back on it, you're like, oh my goodness, what in the world? So where does it live now that all of the pieces of Vitess and who is responsible for what? Because from an outsider's perspective of somebody just we'll say connecting to a PlanetScale database, Seems pretty easy to me. I don't really have to do anything. And so some of those components have gotten a lot smarter and taken a lot of that off of like I guess, the application developer. So what is the state of it right now, or when it became mature? Maybe even not right now, but when it became mature, how do those components fit in with each other?
So the biggest leap that we made, which transitioned Vitess from where it was then to where it is today, was a decision that time that was really, really scary. This keyspace ID that I talked about was physically present as a column on every table.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to know what is the keyspace ID of a row, you could select that row and there is a column that said, this is your keyspace ID. The question that I asked myself is, can we live without that column?
Mm.
And which means that, can we live without that column? And can we live with the fact that of hiding this from the application? What if the application didn't know the keyspace ID?
Mm-hmm.
Would the system continue to work as efficiently as it was before?
Mm-hmm.
And to push that question further, which means that if the application or the converse of that question is, can you compute the keyspace ID using the where clause of your select query?
Mm.
And that question was hard to answer because SQL is unwieldy by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And can you say that this is going to work under all circumstances? And this keyspace ID was scary to get rid of because when we did resharding, looking at the keyspace ID was our only source of truth, or
Mm-hmm.
was the only way we could decide where a row would go. If that keyspace ID was not present, would we be able to compute it on the fly without causing outages and problems and stuff? So it took a few months of pure thinking
Yeah.
to come to the conclusion that yes, this can work.
So before we get
And
into how it could work, what made you ask that question?
because I was not happy that this that you could at that time that you could not write an ODBC driver that could connect to Vitess,
I see. Okay.
because every query needed a
Mm-hmm.
keyspace ID.
And so you were looking at I'm casting this upon you, so if this is wrong, tell me. You were looking at adoption and you were saying, "Hey, if this
Yes,
thing is going to get adoption, we got to play the game, and we can't have custom, connectors for
exactly.
everything."
Yes, yes.
I see. Okay.
We
So,
actually, I'm surprised at how mature we were. We actually at that time felt that for Vitess to have a real future, even within YouTube,
hmm.
it needs to be adopted outside YouTube.
Oh, that is very mature. That's an interesting
And
that's an interesting insight.
we felt that if YouTube was the only user of Vitess, eventually somebody is going to say, why maintain something this bespoke?
Mhm. Yep.
So
Pretty smart
that
guy,
was kind
Sugu.
of what motivated me to think that we need a generic database API for
Okay.
Vitess.
Okay, so you asked the hard question, and then you spent many months thinking about it, and then what happened?
Uh, that was actually one of the hardest problems for me to solve. Uh, uh, Essentially, it didn't stop there. Uh, what I had to do is go back and learn relational algebra.
Oh
And
gosh. Oh man.
and figure out and prove to myself that sharding and combining those shards into a single unit
Mm.
can be modeled using traditional relational algebra. Uh, and that's why that was difficult. And then eventually mapping back the relational algebra back to SQL. I actually the document should still be there on Vitess when I first wrote the initial document. It was and then I wrote an enormous query and showed how this with all possible constructs of an SQL and showed how this maps to a relational operation and how such a relational operation would work in a sharded database.
This is fascinating. Okay, so all right, let me get my thoughts here. So you decided we're going to parse the query, and then we are going to figure out what shard this needs to go to. So we are going to become basically like you're going to eat all of that pain on behalf of the application developers. And that's what takes it from Vitess is pretty useful but pretty specialized to Vitess is extremely useful, and the application needs to know even less, and Vitess will just do a lot more work. And so did you push the same query parser up to VT Gate and use that, or did you write? Okay, so you use that same one.
The parser is the same.
Okay, so the parser is the same, and then you're gonna have to keep it high level. How did you determine from the query which shard it should go to? Just you're gonna have to keep it up here for me. But tell me, just how did you do that?
Yes, so that was actually the what I implemented is not what is there today.
Okay.
But at that time, so the way I started was, let's take the simple case. If it is a select statement where your where clause is the sharding key, it is very straightforward.
We like that.
Yeah, so you start with that, and then you go to a slightly more complex construct, which is a join. Where the join is on the sharding key, and the where clause is also the sharding key. Then the query still goes to the same shard. That was like the next level of complexity. The third level of complexity is you select a query where you do the join on the sharding key, but there is no where clause.
Okay.
So if that happens, then you can actually you don't have to break that query up into smaller parts. You send that query to all shards because without changing it, because all rows for each shard live within that row.
Okay.
And the fourth level of complexity is when you realize, oh, the rows for this shard are not in the same place. In which case, this is where relational algebra came into play, where can you identify parts within this complex query where you can say this part of this query can still be preserved and sent to a single shard or sent as is to multiple shards. So that was the aha moment for me, saying that even if there is a complex query, you can identify parts that can be preserved as is and sent to individual shards.
Incredible. So this is a I don't think learning about relational algebra and deconstructing queries is broadly applicable, but what you did is broadly applicable in that you started with, can we make the simple case work? Can we just make the easy one work? Yes, we can. Let's move on to slightly harder, until you have kind of this framework built up in your head to where you get to the hardest one, and you've kind of taken a few, yes, confidence building, but also like groundwork building steps to get there such that you can tackle the hardest one there at the end. And is there a place still online where we can read this, paper, relational algebra, post, whatever? Is that still available somewhere?
I did a video series. I lost my audience. I lost most of my audience about 3/4 of the way.
Okay.
It's still there on my website, on my YouTube channel, because it is a very hard problem.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And unless you really really unless it's a matter of survival, you would
Yeah.
not want to put yourself through that pain.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna find that, and I'll leave a link down below. So if any of you fellow database nerds want to watch it, I'll put a link down
Yeah, it
below.
it was not planned. It is pure free form. Where I said
Mhm.
I'm just going to start talking,
I love
and I
it.
just kept talking. An hour passed. I said let's stop here,
Hmm.
and I think it's like 6 or 7 parts. So like 7, 8 hours of me just rambling. It's very
Hmm.
boring. I would not recommend that.
I very
And by
much
the way,
doubt
that
that.
that actually I should talk about Andres, who is at PlanetScale. Uh, he is the first one who ingested that entire thing
Wow.
and said,
Okay.
you know what? There's a better way to do this. And he
Oh,
actually
cool.
improved the query processing for Vitess.
Oh man, I love that. I am very pro reading original source material, and in this case, watching original source material, because, like you said, nobody does it, and if nobody is doing it, there's a huge amount an advantage that can be gained when you go straight to the source. So it sounds like that happened at PlanetScale, which brings us to the PlanetScale years, because I want to talk about Vitess for Postgres, and spend a lot of our time there. So tell me, just as briefly or as long as you want to, you founded PlanetScale with a co-founder, and then you decided, God, I need some time off, and you took 3 years off. So let's lump those two things together and tell me about that part of your story before you come back out of retirement for your triumphal return.
So I'll briefly explain how I went into sabbatical retirement. I even called it retirement for a while. When I co-founded PlanetScale with Jiten, I was the only one who left Google from the original Vitess team. So
Oh.
I was actually the sole. Actually, I was the sole maintainer of Vitess even by that time, because YouTube was actually migrating to Spanner,
Hmm.
uh, and that has nothing to do with Vitess being bad. It is just a policy decision at Google that they wanted a uniform data store,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't want to be maintaining something that is bespoke.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I was the only one maintaining Vitess after the. And
Goodness.
Vitess, by the way, is too complex to fit in one person's brain. That includes mine.
Yeah.
And the way I managed it was by actually time compartmentalizing, which means that I would allocate a few months to just one area of Vitess. And during that time, I was incapable of answering questions or helping anyone with anything else. And then I would dump that
Fascinating.
out and move to something else,
Huh.
which is how I maintained it for about 1.5 years or so. It was very stressful. But over this time at PlanetScale, I managed to find great people like Deepthi, Andres, and the
Mm-hmm.
entire Vitess team, and they ramped up very quickly. Uh, and There was a time when I was outproducing the entire team, and by 2022, I could barely keep up with single one of them. They were all
Incredible.
outproducing me, and that's when I realized, you know what? I've succeeded
Yeah, no
at building this
kidding.
team. I need to
Yeah.
take a break. By then, it
Okay.
was like 12 years or so. So
Ugh.
that's how I went on this sabbatical.
Okay. And so you've built up, that's incredible, by the way. You've built up this foundational piece of software, and you get these great people in. And when I was at PlanetScale, worked with Deepthi, and I just love her. She's amazing.
She's awesome.
She's
Yeah.
wonderful. I'm sure the rest of the team is great, but I worked with Deepthi, and she's a delight. So you built up this team of
She
geniuses,
stole
and you
leadership away from me, which I thought was going to be the hardest part.
well, she's doing a great job. So you built up this team of geniuses, and you decided, all right, it's time to take a little rest. And then you go and do what for 3 years? Just chill out.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
I actually I would call it, I kind of reinvented myself.
Oh, cool. Tell me.
Yes, I kind of look and behave like the same person. The way I would put it is, I had I had a value system
Mm,
which I think was good. I think people appreciated, but I don't think I was connected to it emotionally by myself.
interesting.
It was more of a just a behavior. And what I did in the last 3 years are basically worked on connecting myself to myself. I don't know if that makes sense.
Fascinating. Can you give
Being
us any examples?
uh, what would be an example?
Maybe one of the
Um,
values that you felt like was just behavior, but you weren't connected to?
um, Empathy.
Okay.
When you see someone in pain, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you empathize with them, but do you actually feel what they are feeling?
Hmm.
Uh, Sometimes you say, "Oh, something is bad is happening to them," and then you go, you have to, you have to be nice to them. You have to say nice things, but do you actually feel what they are feeling?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the kinds of things that I worked on
How
when
cool.
you say, like understanding, truly understanding people's pains, truly
Yeah.
understanding people's joys, and actually relating to that is what I would. I actually The transformation was so fundamental to me that I actually went into a lot of voluntary work,
Hmm.
because now I understand, why you have to work with other humans,
Mm-hmm.
help others. So I, for a while, thought of doing that full time, until I felt that I started missing tech work also. So I
Mm-hmm.
still do all of the voluntary work, but now I'm also doing all the technical work.
So this is what a delightful story. So you go off into in literature you go off into the wilderness, right? You go off into the wilderness, you reinvent, you rediscover, you find yourself, and then you have the original call that's like pulling you back. So you've done the thing, and you've gone off, and you've made yourself, you've become more yourself, and then the siren song of the thing that you walked away from starts calling back. So tell me, what is it that like started to bring you back, and why was it Postgres this time instead of MySQL?
Uh, the idea of Postgres has always been sitting in the back of my mind, and it was constantly nagging me. And it's not new; it's been there since 2020.
Oh wow.
Uh, in 2020, there were a few people from the Postgres community that talked to me and said, that we need to figure out a way to. There are actually even issues open in
Hmm.
Vitess about it. They say this problem needs solving, and I was excited. I wanted to do it, and but then I feel very guilty. But I had to say it I can't focus on this.
Sure.
There was too much to take care of at PlanetScale.
Mm-hmm.
Too many, like we were still making Vitess work with Vitess, bringing
Mm-hmm.
up this, making the serverless application work. So there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of things going on. I was very sad to put an end to that project. As in, no, I didn't put an end to it. I said, there'll be another time, but not now. And so that has been the back of my mind. Even during my sabbatical, I've talked to people saying that, like I reached out to an old Vitess contributor and told them, you start Postgres for me. And nobody, and so this has been slowly growing, and it became an obsession in the last couple of months when I
Oh
realized
wow.
Postgres is exploding.
Yeah.
And there are I am an advisor to a company called Metronome, and they had an outage. They actually published their postmortem. I saw that. I said, "Oh my God, this this problem needs to be solved today."
Hmm.
And so that's when I decided, what can we do to to restart this project.
And I will say, I don't think you should feel guilty, but the thing that you told that person, I can't do it right now, but someday, is now true. Now is the day you're doing
Yes.
it. So I don't know if that issue is still open, but you got to go find it and you say, we're back, baby. So you've had this bug in the back of your head for a long time. Let's bring Vitess to Postgres. So talk to me about some of the as you're now focusing on that, right? So it's been something that's been there the whole time, but now you're like, let's do this. What are some of the things that you either want to do the same or differently from original or I guess current Vitess, which we'll just call Vitess, and we're going to call the new one Multigres? Is that right?
Multigres, yes.
Multigres. Okay.
Multigres.
So what are some things you want to do with Multigres that are either the same or different than Vitess? Things that worked great or things that you're like, man, now that I have a clean slate, let's redo it. And to color that answer, what are some of the things about Postgres that require you to do something slightly different? So you can take that anywhere you want, but I want to hear about your vision for Multigres.
So let me talk about the things I feel like we did not prioritize in Vitess.
Yeah, and this is no indictment, by the way. Vitess is a fundamentally successful project that is powering huge applications.
Yes.
But you have a chance to start over. So go on.
The first one, compatibility.
Okay.
I would focus on compatibility. Make sure that to the extent possible, every Postgres construct works like before. So Multigres should feel and quack like a Postgres.
Love that. Yep.
That is the highest priority. So when we built Vitess, that was not our goal, mainly because we thought Vitess would become its own standard and database.
Got it.
And that is not true. People, till even today, the first question they ask is, how compatible is it with MySQL? So that is one problem. The other one that we did not really pay attention to is approachability and usability.
Okay.
Vitess is a very, very complex piece of software.
Yeah.
Extremely flexible. Like you could go to Vitess and ask, can you do this very specific thing? The answer is most likely yes. Because all you have to do is take this piece, take that piece, put it together and write a script and it will do this for you. And there is this command line option that you need to change. Like literally, if you do vt tablet -h, you will get like 5 pages of command line options. And yes, and you can change one of those to make Vitess do what you like. But that actually has been a huge barrier for adoption because it's daunting.
Yeah.
Think about bringing up a Vitess cluster. So that is the second problem that I would definitely want to address the new Multigres. What would be a third one? Let me see if I can bring up my notes here. I had some notes somewhere about it. I would say the other problem would be something that we are still struggling with. We finally have. I shouldn't say we. It's the Vitess team that did this, which is 2PC.
Okay.
So the Vitess workload has always encouraged not relying on two-phase commits, distributed transactions, and because we have always believed that two-phase transactions are a slippery slope. Once you let you do it, you may go abuse it and actually end up in a state where you're not happy. So we highly discouraged it to the extent that we didn't even want to support it. And finally, I think the Vitess team realized that we should support it, and they've added first support. And that's something that I would prioritize for in Postgres, because again, it goes back to compatibility. If you without 2PC, you're not going to have full compatibility. So those are the three things I would prioritize moving. Everything else I'll bring mostly.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge endorsement of Vitess. And so with the architecture of Postgres, does that make those things harder, easier, or does it have no effect? Because MySQL and Postgres are fundamentally different beasts, and so you're not going to be able to just grab it all and move it over. Does that make your life a lot easier that you're now doing it for Postgres instead of MySQL?
Yes, I think there are a few reasons why it's easier. One is Postgres has a much cleaner 2PC API. Very beautiful. I saw it. Oh my God. I wish MySQL was this simple.
Oh man.
So that's number one. Compatibility I actually is going to be easier mainly because of how approachable the Postgres code base is and how much tribal knowledge exists in Postgres about the Postgres engine itself.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if we wanted to implement stored procedures, we would basically have to do it right now in Vitess. We would have to do it from the ground up. But if we were doing it in Postgres, we can take the entire existing stored procedure implementation in Postgres and just transport it into Vitess.
So compare the source code of Postgres and MySQL for me real quick. What is I've read horror stories on Hacker News about the source code for MySQL. What is and you said Postgres is so clean and understandable. What's going on there? What's the big difference?
I think the big difference is that there are not as many experts in MySQL about the code because they are I don't even know, like for example, I wouldn't even know where to ask is there somebody who knows how this engine works, and whereas in Postgres there are so many places to ask, and I would say it's the openness of the community.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Postgres
that makes
community
sense.
and
I've
also
heard
the
No, please.
like it feels like any question that you have, you can get it answered. Probably and also the licensing, because it's Postgres license, I can freely copy it. If it's MySQL license, even if I see the code, I cannot copy it.
Gotcha. Well, that makes a huge difference.
Yes,
I've heard amazing things about not the Postgres user community. I haven't heard bad things, but about the Postgres hacker, I think is what they call themselves, the Postgres hackers. I've heard amazing things about that community, the people that actually work down on the core, and how everything is just done out in the open. You just put it on the mailing list, and you got to talk to people and gather consensus, but while that may sound like a slow and arduous process, it's all happening out in the open. And there are people that you can talk to, and you can find them at conferences or email them or hop on a call with them, and you can get all of that knowledge downloaded into your head. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So that part is going to make your life a lot easier. How are you, or you and the team, and we should say that you've joined Supabase to further this effort. So how are you and whatever team you're building around yourself inside of Supabase, how are you going to develop it, structure it, organize it, both like your little new community that is budding and the actual software project? Like, where are you going to do, VT gates and VT tablets? Is all of that architecture coming over? So maybe start with the organization of the team and your decision to join Supabase, and then we can move into the technical organization.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I haven't the idea my idea of joining Supabase is like, I have done this before. I was able to hire and train people. So building a team is not a problem. And there are also older contributors that are out there that I should be able to reach and get them on board. So I have confidence in building the right team, and with the right people, I know it won't be hard to bring them up to speed. So that part, I'm not worried at all.
And is that your mandate inside Supabase? Let's go grab some people and form this Multigres team.
Find
Cool.
the right talent, get them ramped up and do it. So that's the team strategy.
Okay.
And the technical strategy, what I want is Vitess to be a Postgres native project.
Okay.
In other words, I should put a no MySQL sign. So what we don't want is there's two reasons. Like one is anything MySQL specific is we don't want to live with that, for
Right.
a project that is meant to last for many years for Postgres. So we don't want to inherit anything that we did just because it's MySQL. So that's
Yep.
one thing.
Totally.
And the other thing is Vitess is an old project. It's 15 years old. It has legacy features that are either not in use or that we are supporting only because we don't want to break somebody. There's no reason to bring those in also into this new project. So for these two reasons, what we've decided to do was we are going to start from scratch and we are going to import, copy over what we think we want instead of taking Vitess as is and retrofitting it to make it to work for Postgres.
Cool. So you get to do the thing that every developer always wants to do, and that is a rewrite. You get to start over. So you get to start over, but not only are you starting over, you're starting over with a solid foundation from which you can pull, and you're starting over with a mandate from a successful company so that you can actually go out and build the team and you can spend the time to do this right. Normally rewrites are happening, as the plane's on the way down, you're building the parachute, but you're not doing that here. You've got the time, you've got the bandwidth, you've got the space. And so where do you even begin? Like in the beginning you said we started, the VT gate, we started, or the tablet or whatever, we start with select star where ID equals, and it's like, okay, we can do that. So in this situation, walk me through, like, where are you actually going to start? What component or what, like, Postgres extension, or where are you going to get your hooks in?
The first one is actually to build a VT tablet and a VT gate.
Okay.
A very basic version of the two. And actually, our goal is to deploy it throughout Supabase, which means that once this is ready, this will be the Supabase load balancer. This will be your Supabase front end, unified. And the reason why we want to do this is because once you got your connection, that connection stays until your database grows to 500 terabytes. You don't have to.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah. You never have to know that your things are now completely different underneath. And you should not know that you went sharded. You should not know that all these transitions took place. It should be completely trans. So for that reason, what we want is Vitess to manage your life from the beginning till the end. So the Supabase thing, build in a weekend scale to millions. It just changed to build in a weekend scale to billions.
Oh, that's amazing. So you're gonna start with the router, which is the VT gate, right? And that's the one that the outside world, the application developers will connect to, and it will hold that connection and serve as kind of like an opaque layer that's like, don't worry, what's going on behind the curtain? We got it. We're in control. Yeah. You connect to us. We'll handle the rest. So that's are you going to call them MG gates for Multigres?
I think it's going to remain VT gate. I looked at it. There is just too much VT.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's going to not only be hard technically, but you are going to continue to say VT gate forever. I guarantee it.
That's
yeah. So you're going to start with the VT gate, which is the router, and the VT tablet, which sits next to, in this case, Postgres, and handles is it still handling the sort of like blocking of bad queries and stuff like that? This VT gate?
Some of those actually, we may actually not port all those features. Because many of the that's actually a good question. We may not port it initially because we don't see many people using those features anymore for one reason or another. I think when we were there, because we were pushing the databases to the limit, we were very sensitive to these changes. But once you are scaled out, I don't think it's as big a deal.
Okay, cool.
Is my guess. Yeah.
So that raises my next question, which is, which are, if you had to put like a punch list of these are the three things that we definitely have to hit 0.1 release or whatever. So what do you have those in mind? And if not,
yes.
Just off the top, okay, let's hear them. What are the big guys that you're trying to hit?
The VT tablet and the proxy layer. Where I want to be is being able to serve sharded queries.
Okay.
Maybe not stored procedures. Maybe, don't know, but at least queries. The for insert, update, delete, select. Those 4 queries in a fully sharded Postgres.
Okay.
So that would be what I would call my MVP.
Okay, that's your North Stars. You want to be able to serve sharded queries.
Yes.
Okay. Transparently, right. Yeah. With no knowledge from the application developer, which is what makes Vitess work, in my opinion. So what about the next features? Are you thinking, does that include resharding? And how much of, I guess this is an interesting situation you find yourself in, because you're coming into a mature company that has a lot of features. And so are you going to be trying to pull some of those features and put them into Multigres? Or how does that interplay kind of work within Supabase?
Well, the advantage is Supabase treats Postgres as a black box.
Okay.
And we become that black box. So outside that black box, it doesn't matter what Supabase is doing. They would just connect to Multigres now. So the rest of Supabase is not affected by what we do underneath.
That's a nice integration point. I'm thinking about something like database branching. Does that not feel like it crosses over between maybe what Supabase is already doing and where Multigres is going to come in? Or is that something you have thought about? Because I have to imagine there are some places where it's going to be kind of blurry as to who's responsible.
That's a good question. I actually don't know how database branching works in Supabase. But I would presume that at the end of the day, even if you branch to database, you're going to create another one, with the same schema. So I think it will still work fine by the fact that Multigres is a black box that masquerades as Postgres. If you want to create a copy, you create a copy, and Multigres will create a copy for you. So you should not care that it is a sharded Postgres under the covers. Would be the way I would approach it. But what you say has a point. Like some of these abstractions, may not be as perfect. In which case, I am in Supabase, so I could go talk to the team and we work something out.
Yep. Oh, I can't wait to have you back in a year to figure out how all this stuff finally plays out. This is so fascinating to me. So, where are you? Where's the project right now? Your announcement came maybe last week. I feel like it was pretty recent. Last week, the week before, something like that. You are now inside of Supabase. Talk to us about the status of both the project and the team.
Well, I learned 2 days learning Mac because I had previously I was previously a Linux user. Okay. I think I last used Mac at least over 10 years ago. So I'm
just laughing because you're like one of the foremost computer science brains in the world, and you join this company and you're like, I don't know what is this thing? I don't know what this is. Okay, so you got a little bit of a learning curve. You're on a Mac. All right, that's a good start.
But I am making, while I can still type. So I'm actually making a feature list. I'm making a project plan.
Okay.
I'm making I'm also talking about some making some core changes that the old Vitess has that the new Vitess need not have, or
Mm-hmm.
some cool extensions
Mm-hmm.
that we don't have the luxury to do with the old Vitess that we can do with the new, because we now have a clean slate. So I'm brainstorming with myself right now because there's nobody else, and so I'm doing that, um, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, so you're
Clean
getting to
slate is, as you
dream. You're
said,
getting
it's
to
pretty
dream a
exciting.
little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds fun.
Yeah.
So in your wildest dreams, let's not talk about reality. In your wildest dreams, where do you see Multigres going? Either from like a adoption and impact standpoint, or from a feature standpoint, where you're like, you know what? I don't even want to say this out loud, but wouldn't it be crazy if? So as you're in this dreaming phase and planning and trying to like map out what is going to be a huge contribution to the database ecosystem, what are these things that you're like, oh, that would be incredible? Do you have any of those that you're thinking of?
I think the this dream may sound simple, but my dream is someone coming in and being able to say, "This is just Postgres,"
Mm,
except that it can scale massively.
mm-hmm. And
Is what
I will say that that is a simple dream from like a consumer's perspective, but probably a big, hairy, audacious goal from your perspective, right? That
it's
has to feel
actually.
like a
Yeah,
huge goal.
it's almost unachievable, but can we do it? Right.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's what makes
But
it
it
so
should
fun.
not, they should not know, they should not feel like it's a different
Mm-hmm.
system, because that hurt us so much in Vitess. uh,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
other than that, like, I want to see, I mean, this is something that Vitess is totally capable of. I would like to see databases that run into the petabytes
Mm-hmm.
comfortably.
Yep. Yep. Okay, those are good goals. I like that. I especially like the focus on, and maybe this is your empathy showing the focus on the compatibility, because one of the frustrating things is connecting to a Vitess cluster or PlanetScale database and finding out, oh, this doesn't work. Like I can't do correlated subqueries or whatever weird things that we developers like to do. And they've been hammering pretty hard on compatibility, but to hear that as like a founding principle for Multigres is, I think that seems directionally correct to me, because for every Sugu who wants to like build out a brand new database, there are 5 million developers that just want to run a database and they just want it to work. And so having compatibility be so high up on the list seems like a wise decision from my point of view. But I know that that's going to be super hard from your point of view. And so that's what makes it a good goal. And that's what makes it exciting. You're going to have to sit around for 3 months and think about things again.
Simple and hard.
Yes, exactly. And from the perspective of building the team, um, is there anything you want to say to anyone that might be listening, of people you're looking for, or how's that process going, or like where are you trying to pull these people? How big of a team are you going to start with? Tell me about your team building thoughts.
The I've always liked smaller teams. I would
Okay.
say something in the range of 5 to 10 people
Mm-hmm.
is what I would say the sweet spot. I still feel proud that Vitesse has never had a team size greater than 10, for example. Even
That's
it's
crazy.
like in its crazy, and we were able to compete with all other distributed systems with such a
Mm-hmm.
small team.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in the power of efficacy of a single
Mm-hmm.
engineer being able to, I think a small team works so well together that they can outperform extremely large teams.
Mm-hmm.
So Vitesse has proven that, and that has been the case even uh, in my previous lives, both at YouTube and PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like 5 to 10 people would be the number of people I have in mind, and Uh, and anyone, I would say anyone that has worked on Vitess uh, will obviously be welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And
I assume it's
but
all
if
going to be
you're,
the same stack. It's all going to be Go, same as
it's the
Vitess
same.
because you're
Yeah,
going to
you'll
pull it
be
over. Yeah,
copying a lot
cool.
of code from Vitess. As a matter of fact, 90% of Vitess is actually agnostic of MySQL. Most people don't know this
Oh,
because that's how we built Vitess. We did not want to get locked down with MySQL
smart.
until we were pressured to, which is why it was not compatible because we
Mm-hmm.
did not want to do anything specific to MySQL.
Mm, that
And
makes
then
sense.
later we said, okay, we'll start working towards that.
So,
So
are you actively hiring right now? Like, are there?
yes, we are
Okay,
actively hiring. There is a link in the blog post that
perfect.
at Supabase. So if you are interested, click on that link and please apply. And
Wonderful.
yeah, we have already a bunch of applicants. We
I
are
bet. Yeah.
interviewing a few. So yes, and at some point of time, we will actually say we have enough because
Yeah.
I don't want to build a big team.
Yeah. 5 or 10 is not very many. Well, I'll leave a link down below for anyone that has either worked with Vitess or is a super Go genius or anything like that. If you want to
Or
apply,
anybody
please do.
distributed systems or deep database knowledge.
Perfect. Yes, I'll leave a link below for all of that. So speaking of your blog post, you kind of came out of nowhere. You've been out in the wilderness, and then you come back and you're like, by the way, I'm joining Supabase and we're doing Multigres. What was the response like to that? I mean, I saw it, but tell me from your point of view, what was the public's reaction to that announcement?
It was overwhelmingly positive. I
Yeah,
did not expect.
that's what I saw.
I did not like. I kind of felt like I come from the MySQL world. I thought I may not be accepted by
Mm-hmm.
the Postgres community. So I feel very humbled that they like the people are welcoming me. So I will keep that in mind. So I did not. So yeah. I didn't expect to be welcomed this well, and I will respect that for sure.
I think that is a testament both to you and your proof of work and to the Postgres community that they're so excited to have you become like a pretty fundamental part of it doing this massive project. So I'm glad to hear that's what I saw from the outside is everybody was like, "Oh, this totally rules." And I'm glad to hear that was felt by you as well because I think it is well deserved. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but tell me, is there anything else about Multigres or things you're looking forward to or things that are exciting for you or anything else you want to leave the audience with? Any just kind of broad thoughts or anything like that?
Oh, that's I never thought about that. uh, I think you covered everything that I wanted to say, and I would say that I would talk about now if you are interested. Yeah, I'm definitely looking for talent.
Okay,
Definitely looking for talent is what
wonderful.
at this point my top the top of my mind is that
Okay.
building the
Well,
team.
if you're listening and you want to work with a thoughtful genius, I'll leave some links down below to where you can find Sugu. I have to say, I have to tell you, you should be incredibly proud of all the things that you have done. You are, you're extremely thoughtful, but also clearly massively intelligent, and the stuff that you have done is very impressive. And so, I hope that you feel that. I know that you worked on it for 12 years and then had to be like, I got to take a step back. But I hope you're coming back with tons of energy, and I hope you feel like, man, this is going to be great because I think it is, and I think you should be super proud of all the stuff that you've done.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on here. I'll leave links down below for everything we've talked about, so people can find out more. And tell us just as we go here, where can people find you online if they want to connect?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Sugu. You can find
Okay,
me on x.com, S Saugau.
okay,
And where else do I go? I think I'm on Reddit also.
Okay.
Shout out.
Okay.
Yes, shout out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So if you want to go see his Reddit comments, go over there. I'll leave the links to all of that down below. Thank you
I've
all
not been
for
very
listening.
socially active, by the way.
Yeah.
But now I am. I realize that I should have been more active.
I don't know. I think, if you're going to go on sabbatical, logging off seems like the right thing to do. So we'll say that was the right thing to do, but now you're back. So people can go on LinkedIn and Twitter or Reddit, I suppose, and find you if they want to hang out. So thank you, Sugu, for being here. This has been a delight. This has been so much fun. I hope you enjoyed this.
Made this as much fun for me too.
Oh, good. Well, that's very nice. If y'all are listening on audio, there is a video on YouTube. And if you're listening on YouTube, there is an RSS audio only feed. I'll leave links to both in the show notes or the description. Until the next time, we'll see you later.